Welcome aboard! We will be your guides during this magical journey into the movies. It's the perfect job for us because we love the movies. It's showtime! Ready when you are, CB!
Action!
Welcome to Monoreel Radio, episode number 324. I'm Sean.
And I'm Jackie.
And we are here this week to review and discuss Pretty Woman as it celebrates its 35th anniversary.
I kind of can't believe we're discussing this film on Monoreel Radio, but it is, in fact, a touchstone.
I remember when we first talked about doing this show, we realized that eventually we were going to have to start really doing deep cuts, and not just what the February kind of deep cuts, but really getting into Touchstone. Because inevitably, you're going to, we're 324 films in. You're kind of, not that you're ever going to run out of Disney movies, but there's only so many princess movies and musicals we can do. So I'm not surprised that we're reviewing this. I can't believe we're finally at the point where we are reviewing this. To me, that's what's staggering more than anything else.
Well, and you kind of forget all of these huge titles that Disney does, in fact, have under their belt, because I do not associate this as a Disney film, even though Princess Diaries is almost, not a carbon copy exactly. They did recycle a lot of the same cast. It is Gary Marshall again. But in the sense of it being a Cinderella story, that's where your mind goes. That, I feel, is the more obvious Disney connection. So I do want to talk about the acquisition of this film a little bit, because that's what it was. You would think, especially with something like Princess Diaries, that, when they brought in Jeffrey Katzenberg in the late 80s, 90s, as we've all seen in Waking Sleeping Beauty, when they wanted to start opening up the portfolio of Disney beyond just animation and doing a lot of these big films with big Hollywood names, that is why they formed the Touchstone banner, was to produce films like this. So you would have thought, Katzenberg is sitting there going, all right, we've told Cinderella a million times. Let's do the adult version of Cinderella. Get me a script, get me Richard Gere. And that was the pitch. It was not like that at all. This script was written under a completely different title. It was called 3000, which we will delve into why it was named that later on. And it was much darker. It was a drama. And it wasn't until they brought Gary Marshall on as the director that it started taking this turn into a rom-com. And then Disney purchased it.
Yeah, this movie really changed the Walt Disney Company moving forward, because this film was such a hit. This was, at one point, not only the 5th highest grossing film of all time, but it was Disney's highest grossing R-rated film until less than a year ago.
Wow.
Deadpool and Wolverine.
Deadpool, yeah.
Took the title, but until last year, this was the highest grossing R-rated film in the company's history. So this opened up a new door for Disney to get into that more adult-oriented. Yes, they had done it already. Splash was a big deal, and Who Framed Roger Rabbit, I think, was the year prior to this. This really, though, star-studded cast really kind of pushed Touchstone to the next envelope, and that's where a lot of the emphasis on animation sort of it started turning away, because they were focusing on films like this. And then Beauty and the Beast really changed everything a year later in 91 when it gets nominated for Best Picture.
God, can you imagine? What a time. This and Beauty and the Beast, coming off of Little Mermaid and then going into Aladdin. Honestly, those years, it was not just the animation renaissance. You could really not touch Disney. You're obviously very big into these 90s classic films with talent like this. We've never really talked about this. What is your history with Pretty Woman? Was this something that you had watched a lot, or you checked it out because it's a big title, or how many times would you say you've seen it?
before watching it for the purpose of doing this review, once.
Oh, wow.
Like 6 years ago. My history with Pretty Woman, I knew the title as a kid because I loved Space Invaders, which, if it has it, I don't know if it has an anniversary this year or if the anniversary was last year for Space Invaders, but it was another Touchstone movie that, like, eventually I would be excited to talk about on this program. Could be a good Halloween film, we'll see. I don't know. But this trailer played on the VHS tape.
Okay.
And so I wore out the VHS tape for Space Invaders as a kid. So every time I watched it, I saw the trailer for this. That's how I knew Pretty Woman. Fast forward until, literally into my near mid-30s, and I'm like, I think it was on demand somewhere for free. And I said, I've never seen this before, but everybody talks about it. And it was like, I got nothing else going on. You may have been on vacation with your family. I don't know what it was. I just remember I was like, I'm going to throw this on and check it out. And I was like, wow, this is not what I expected it to be whatsoever. I knew what the premise was, but I didn't expect it to be as involved as it was. What about you? What was your history with this film?
Similar. I mean, taking into account that we were 4 when this film came out, and it was an R-rated movie, obviously it was not something that we were going to be viewing within the first couple of years that it came out.
Right.
And that's the thing, right? It's such a popular title. It's one that everybody knows. So it's kind of one that you know in the back of your mind, like, oh, I'm going to circle back to this just because it's such a cultural touchstone.
Right.
Which is why the company is so aptly named. So me especially, I made it all the way to college without having seen it. And now I'm in film school and everybody's referencing Pretty Woman. And I'm like, I got to watch it. I think the biggest driving force behind me wanting to watch it was because in She's All That, when they do the big makeover and Rachel Lee Cook comes down the stairs in the red dress, she says, I feel like Julia Roberts in Pretty Woman, except for that whole hooker thing. And because that was such a reference, I'm like, all right, I have to go and watch this movie so I can figure out, like I knew the premise, but I was like, I have to see what she's talking about because I loved She's All That. And then I went with my family on vacation to LA in 2006, and we did one of those bus tours.
Yeah.
Not like TMZ. TMZ was like not even a thing at that point. But it was just your generic, like, it was actually a pretty knockoff one. Like 2 guys with a van would drive you around LA. We probably should not have gotten in the van. It wasn't even like an open air bus kind of a thing. But any tour we did, they pointed out all of the filming locations for this movie because obviously they're very prominent. It's, shot right in the heart of Beverly Hills. So it was after that trip that I was like, okay, I have to sit down and watch this. So I think my first viewing was somewhere around 2006, 2007. And I've not revisited it much. It's not to say that I didn't like it, but it was just like, okay, I've seen Pretty Woman now, but I don't think that I like fully appreciated it back then. I think because in the 2000s, like there was such a stigma with fluffy rom-coms. And in my mind, I guess somewhere I lumped this one in with it. But like, this is like the ultimate rom-com. It is in a class all by itself.
Yeah. Well, has this film aged very well? How has our opinion changed of the film since our first viewings? Is this, in fact, a timeless classic? That, on top of many other things, is what we are here to discuss today.
This episode is sponsored by Fierce Fox Co., designers of handmade silkscreen shirts. Fierce Fox has a t-shirt, tank top, hoodie, or crew neck for every fandom. So whether it's the movies or theme parks, princesses or villains, the MCU or Star Wars, everyone will find something they love. The designs range from subtle quotes from our favorite films to iconic characters we can wear proudly in so many different styles, such as sketchbook and concert tees. Listeners of Monoreel Radio can get a 20% discount using the code Monoreel at checkout. Visit fiercefoxco.com to check out all of the collections.
Corporate raider Edward Lewis is on business in LA when he leaves a party to find himself lost in the city. Vivian, a young prostitute, finds herself behind on the rent when her roommate Kit took their money to buy drugs. Edward pulls over to work the clutch on his car when Vivian approaches him, thinking that he wants company for the evening. She offers to give him directions for $20 and helps him get back to his very swanky hotel. As they converse, Edward finds her interesting while also feeling bad for her, so he invites her back to his room. Edward is divorced and his new girlfriend is currently moving out of his apartment in New York, so he doesn't want to spend the night alone and pays Vivian $300 to spend the night. The next day, he asks her to stay the entire week, and they agree on a fee of $3,000 plus money for clothes. When Vivian goes shopping on Rodeo Drive, she is turned away by snobby saleswomen who look down upon her. When she returns to the hotel, Barney, the manager, finds a store who is willing to sell to her. Meanwhile, Edward begins to second-guess if he wants to go through with his latest business deal, much to the dismay of his lawyer, Philip. After a tense dinner with the Morris family, whose company Edward is trying to break apart, Edward realizes that he and Vivian are very similar despite their very different professions, and they start to grow closer, though Vivian pushes back. The next day, Edward takes her shopping, and she has the time of her life. She slowly starts to sort of blend in with Edward's lifestyle and social circle, but Philip becomes suspicious of her being a corporate spy. Edward tells Philip the truth of how they met, which leads to Philip making a pass at her, upsetting her, and leading to an argument between Edward and Vivian, as she believes that she has been made to feel very cheap, despite his apologies. She asks to be paid, but leaves without taking any of the money. Edward apologizes again, and she decides to stay and finish her last 3 days with her, but warns him not to hurt her again. Vivian tells Edward how she followed a guy to LA who broke up with her. Without a way to pay the rent, she meets Kit and starts working as a hooker. The next day, Edward surprises Vivian with a private jet to San Francisco, where they attend the opera, which Vivian loves. As they grow closer, Vivian teaches Edward to mellow out a bit. Vivian breaks her own rule and kisses Edward, turning this business relationship into a personal relationship when she tells him that she loves him. She thinks he's asleep. She has no idea that he's awake, and he hears the entire thing. The next day, which was the last day of their arranged week together, Edward offers to get Vivian a condo, car, and allowance in New York, where he can see her regularly. But she is offended when it seems like more of a prostitution arrangement than a personal one. This is all business to her. Though Edward explains that he isn't ready to be in love at this time, she still feels like he is doing this out of nothing more than wanting company. Kit arrives at the hotel and calls Vivian out for falling for Edward and tells her that this situation would work out better than anyone else that they know, because Vivian, of course, does not believe that this is for real. Morris meets with Edward and Philip, telling him that he's reconsidered their initial offer. Edward and Morris meet privately, where Edward agrees to help save Morris's company rather than dismantling it. Philip becomes furious and goes to the hotel to find Edward, but instead finds Vivian, who he assaults in the room. Before Edward arrives, punches Philip and kicks him out, ending their business relationship. Edward asks Vivian to stay one more night for free, but she declines and thanks him for what she calls lots of special gifts. She goes back to her apartment to pack her things to move to San Francisco to find a job and finish her high school diploma. Edward is en route to the airport back to New York, where he decides to reroute and go to Vivian, where he reevaluates his life. He rescues her from her quote-unquote tower, conquers his fear of heights, where she rescues him in return. So, they plant brilliantly, mind you, very early on in the movie, that Edward is not only unhappy in his profession, but he is incredibly socially awkward.
Yes.
When they have him at this very swank party, they have a limousine for him. This is all at Philip's home in LA. And he just wants nothing to do with being there and takes Philip's car. See, this is how he doesn't know how to use the clutches, because he can't drive stick, because I don't think he's ever really driven a car anyway.
He does say at one point his first car was a limo, yeah.
And the limo is blocked in, and he doesn't want to wait for the valets to move them. So he takes this brand new car, doesn't know how to drive it. That's how he ends up getting lost. I love that this is how we establish this character.
Same. Even though this like office party is such a 90s open, even though they're not in an office, it's still like a work function where they're just kind of getting together socially on a weekend, I think. Yeah, because I think that's the bet. It's a weekend to a weekend when he leaves to go back to New York. It just feels like such a classic 90s open. But then it does sort of subvert your expectations because during the opening credits, as he's driving through LA, I think you'd kind of expect it to be through the glitz and glam of the Hollywood Hills.
Yeah.
And they take him right into Hollywood, where it's a little bit seedy. But especially, this is very reflective of the time in the late 80s, early 90s. Like, I think people forget about that nowadays. This is what Hollywood was really like. It was, everybody was going out there, they're broke to chase a dream. So this is how you kind of ended up going down a different path that you may not have seen yourself going down. And I think now, because we're a generation removed from the people who did go out and chase their dreams in Hollywood, they're having kids. We see all these Nepo babies growing up with extreme wealth and flaunting it online. I think that's what everybody thinks of Hollywood as now, is just that everybody was always wealthy and born into it all the time. But no, there was a time where it was still being built up to be what it is.
It's amazing, though, because so many things remain the same. Hollywood Boulevard is still full of homeless drug addicts and prostitutes. It is not as glamorous as people think it is. I think people assume that Hollywood is golden age of Hollywood with red carpets and the Kardashians. And that's not what it is. The Chinese theater, where all of these glamorous red carpets are held, where the Academy Awards are over by
The Kodak Theater.
It is a total dump over there. But it's not unlike Times Square. They're very similar. Like Hollywood Boulevard and Times Square are very much the same thing. You see the countdown, you see the ball drop on New Year's Eve, and you think it's this incredible place, and it's disgusting. Hollywood Boulevard's so much the same thing. So you're right. At the time that they filmed this movie, people ended up in a path they didn't necessarily think that they would go down because they were chasing a dream. That's not necessarily the case now, that they're going out there chasing a dream and they end up in this position, but very little has changed there. And I love that they used this as a setting and that they didn't shy away from it, specifically Disney, that they didn't try to cleanse the real Hollywood.
Right. Well, now you have OnlyFans too. So
Yes.
really, who's out here doing this now?
This is true.
Speaking of, while while Edward is driving through the streets of LA, getting more and more lost, they're cutting back and forth, and we get our first look at Vivian.
Yeah.
This is a very risque intro for her.
Super risque. She's got her alarm clock set for 10 o'clock at night. She's in her very revealing undergarments.
It's lingerie. You can say lingerie. We've already said prostitute.
And OnlyFans. This is a very different episode of Monoreel Radio.
Yeah, we should have led with this up top, that this is not the one to listen to with your children.
I don't think anybody that's seen Pretty Woman is realistically going to listen to this with their kids.
There's also absolutely no way to get around saying it. Like, I'm not going to use slang, but like there's only so many ways that you could, what do they want to be called now? A lady of the night? Like, I don't know what's PC at this point.
A call girl? I don't know. We'll have to reach out. You can send us a message if you know what the proper term is. What do you use in your profession?
We're going to get yelled at.
We're
going to get scolded.
Actually, let me ask you this before we move on. I actually want to use this as a gauge here and to talk sort of how the times have changed when it comes to film and what's acceptable. With the exception of a few F-bombs and some very quick, light nudity. Very quick. I mean, you're talking like a handful of frames. I don't know that if they release this film today that it necessarily carries an R rating.
I honestly didn't think it had one.
It does. Like I said, a couple of foul words. I mean, I think I can count on one hand how many times you hear the F word in this movie. 3? I don't think more than 4. And let's just say you see more of Kate Winslet in Titanic than you see of Julia Roberts here, and that film carried a PG-13 rating. For an R-rated film, by today's standards, it's actually really tame.
Well, here's the thing. There is an entire rubric that they follow that deems a movie rating. So if you check a certain amount of boxes, you are automatically forced into the R. It's not a matter of, some studio head is looking at this and going, okay, what can we get away with? I think my film should be rated PG-13 and then puts it out into the world. It doesn't work like that at all. There are all legal guidelines that they are working within when they rate these movies. But I think that over the years, they have been adjusted so that you're getting away with more in PG-13. I agree with you. I think that this movie by today's standards would be rated PG-13 because you're really not seeing much at all. I think that that's the more so than language. I think that that's the automatic assumption with this film is that you're going to see something revealing or suggestive. And I mean, it's pretty tame by today's standards.
Yeah, especially given the subject matter.
So now we start to reveal a little bit more about Vivian's character as she goes out to work. We meet Kit, who got her into this line of work. I absolutely love the relationship between the two of them. And I think that this does such a great job of developing the character right away because everybody is going to come in with a preconceived notion of what they think a prostitute is, right? There's a negative stigma attached to it. A lot of times people just assume that they're drug addicts selling their body for money, and they humanize Vivian so early on that she's a woman that's just trying to get by. And I love that when she does meet Edward, it's just a chance meeting. He wasn't out looking to pick her up. He's just trying to get back to the hills. So I think that this is just such a strong open. And then once she gets in that car with him and they take off, quite literally the film takes off from there because the dialogue between these two and the subtext is just so freaking incredible.
I love that they plant her as being very innocent from the start, which was probably part and parcel due to the fact that you had at that point an unknown actress as your lead. People don't realize, I didn't realize, that this was only Julia Roberts' second film. Obviously, by the time I recognized who Julia Roberts was, even as a kid seeing the trailer for this, watching Space Invaders, she was a massive celebrity.
Right.
But she was a massive celebrity because of this film. So that was something that was interesting for me to learn, obviously in doing research for this. But I think casting somebody unknown, you have no preconceived notion with her. I thought that was really smart. She also plays it incredibly well. She has an innocence to her, a naivete, but when she has to, she turns on the attitude. She's self-defensive, and she has to be, right? But it specifically comes out in the dialogue in this car with Richard Gere, with Edward. Their chemistry from the moment they get in that car, to your point, it's palpable.
Absolutely. And I love that they also establish how smart she is too, because that's really what is so intriguing to Edward when she's talking about the car and he's like, how do you know all of this? And then he realizes like, oh, there's a person under all of that makeup and under that getup, and you're not like everyone else. And I think that that's why even once they get back to the hotel, he doesn't actually want her to leave, because I think from the jump, it does a good job of setting up that he is attracted to her, line of work aside.
Yes.
He just wants to spend time with her because he's interested in her, but the hang up is about her profession. Otherwise, he probably would have just taken her out on a date that night.
Yeah, the conversation from their car into the lobby, and then the lobby into the hotel room, the penthouse suite that he has, The dialogue's incredible. They're fantastic together. He is so shy and awkward, and she is so outgoing that the yin and the yang work perfectly. And when he says to her, "You surprise me, and nobody surprises me," that's a catalyst for the entire film right there.
No, and it's just so interesting because I don't think that it was ever about wanting her to perform her job duties, shall we say.
Yeah.
I think it was just about her companionship specifically because, I mean, yes, he does establish he doesn't want to be alone because he just broke up with his girlfriend in New York. But I think she could have been anybody. This was just about her. I also like that bit of dialogue once they do get up to the penthouse. She just sort of assumes that he's got a wife and a girlfriend because this is the type of man that she's used to dealing with, that, you know, they'll be out on a business trip even though they're married and they have one on the side and they'll hire somebody for the night. So I think that's a really funny moment. And I also love, to your point, how he is so awkward and, you know, this is just kind of what she does. So she's comfortable and she's sort of trying to push him along. So she breaks out all of the condoms and he calls it a buffet of safety.
It's hysterical.
It's one of the best lines in the movie.
But he calls it a buffet.
A buffet, yes, he does. And then, you know, there are those moments of surprise where she asks for a second. She wants to go floss because he's given her champagne and strawberries, but he thinks that she's in the bathroom doing drugs. Like, the subtext in that scene is absolutely incredible.
Yeah. The next morning, obviously, you know, it didn't stop him from doing what she was there to do. The next morning, he orders her that big breakfast. It's a big spread. And, you know, she's still kind of awkward because she goes to just lean on the table. And he goes, you know, there's 4 other chairs here. Makes her sit in the chair, but, you know, she's got her feet up on the chair. She's very comfortable. Her body language, like Julia Roberts' performance this entire film with her body language is incredible because she's doing things like this. She has that weird twitch that they call out.
Yes.
The fidget that they call out over and over and over again. But it's like, we don't realize that she's doing it because in moments where you're anxious, everybody fidgets a little. Mm-hmm. Like, so you see it and you don't even realize she's doing it until he calls her out on it. Like, it's so subtle. I thought that this whole thing was great. When he comes back to her and says, you know, listen, I want you to spend the entire week. I want the next 6 days with you at my beck and call. I love the line, I don't know what it's like to be a beck and call girl. That was hysterical.
That was great. And it's also a callback to breaking up with the girlfriend. That's why she left.
Right. And they negotiate this price. And as he's leaving to go to work and he tells her, you know, go out, go shopping, get yourself a dress tonight for dinner. Something conservative, nothing flashy. As they're getting ready to part for the day, she goes, you know, hey, I'd have taken $2,000. And he goes, well, I would have paid $4,000. I love that moment of dialogue because I love that moment of brute honesty between the two of them.
Yeah, right? It's kind of like they're admitting they just want to be around each other.
Yeah.
I want to circle back to what you said about her body language and sitting on things. You could make a drinking game out of the amount of times Julia Roberts sits on something that is not a chair throughout this film.
Yeah.
It's hilarious and I love it. But I didn't realize until we were talking it through just now, I feel like that's a subtle way of her demonstrating when she is confident. Because if you think about it, when she comes out to breakfast the next morning, she's just ready to leave. She's like, all right, you paid for the night. Our business transaction is over. I'm getting out of here. But he's a gentleman and invites her to stay. So she kind of does the fidget before he says, no, I ordered you breakfast. And then it's like, here, look what I got you. And then she sits right on the table. But now that I'm thinking about it, in the scenes where she's shopping, she starts out fidgeting. And then once somebody's like, no, it's okay. Like, no one's judging you in this situation. She'll sit on any surface that is not in fact a chair, which is really funny. I do think, though, that the terms of agreement could have used a little bit more of an explanation. Like, instead of just saying, I want to hire you for the week and I want a professional, we can kind of tell that it's because Edward, A, doesn't have the time to be bothered whining and dining someone while he's there on business. You know, he's up late, he's working all night. And, you know, I think the subtext of that is also that he doesn't want to put himself in a position to catch feelings for anyone. So instead of just saying, I want to hire you for a week, I want a professional, like, why not say, I'm hiring you as an escort. You're going to need to come to dinners. We're going to get you clothes. I want you to play the part of my date. Instead of making it, we have to hide who you really are. Because on her first day in Beverly Hills, she's going to have more than enough thrown in her face, reminding her of her lot in life.
Well, because I think two things here. He's incredibly awkward, and he doesn't know how to talk to women. I don't think he knows how to talk to anybody outside of a boardroom, quite honestly. I think that's a part of it, and I think the other part of it is, I think he was catching feelings for her earlier than he alluded to, and he didn't want her to feel like a cheap prostitute. And in the process, later on, tries so hard to not make her feel like a cheap hooker that he makes her feel like a cheap hooker.
Yeah, full circle moment there for him.
I think that's really all it was about.
So her first day.
Yeah, let's talk about Rodeo Drive.
She gets kicked out of the store because they're just making assumptions based on her wardrobe. What's interesting to me, though, is that they write her off solely on her outfit, which she struts in that store with total confidence, ready to buy some things. It's not like she came in looking like she was poor walking in off the street. So they are just entirely judging her based on the fact that she looks like a streetwalker. And that's the whole point, right? Is that no matter how much she gets ahead, somebody's going to knock her down. But for as much as this does sort of reflect the time and the stigma attached to prostitution, you know, I just thought it was kind of harsh right off the rip for them to be like, no, we're not, you can't afford this. Because, you know, Vivian starts asking like, oh, how much is this? And they're like, it's not in your size. Meaning, we don't want to sell it to you. Just get out. And clearly, you know, Vivian's not going to take no for an answer. But I guess the point of it is that they were sizing her up based on what she's wearing. They made an assumption about what she does for a living. And they ultimately kick her out. I wish there was maybe a little bit more so that I mean, the point is them being judgmental, but I wish that there was a little bit more like Vivian did something, like there was a tell about what she did for a living. Because I think it's too much of a leap for them to just to judge her based off of the outfit. We know what she's doing, but I mean, I don't know. Maybe this was so common back in the day that it was normal to just size a woman up like this and be like, nope, get out. I assume that you're a hooker.
Well, I think coming out of the 80s, which was a decade of excess, a decade where everybody wanted to be an investment banker, certainly I think it was probably not uncommon in some of these areas, probably still not uncommon in some of the areas, where gentlemen callers will hire entertainment for the evening. I'm sure it wasn't unusual to see these women walking the streets, though it would be uncommon for them to come into a store and try to go shopping. So I think you're right. Something that they could have done earlier, we see her adjusting scuffs on her boots with a Sharpie. When she gets in the car with Edward, he calls her out immediately because she's got her boots held together with a safety pin. It could have been things like that. When she gets back to the hotel and shows Barney all of the money that she has, it's not like neatly stacked, it's right. Literally just crumpled wads of cash. You could have made her look, and because she's outside of her comfort zone, She could have been fumbling. She could have appeared to be more of a mess than she was.
Yes.
Instead, I think they really... she's already so endearing that I think they want to send it home that she is being judged for her outward appearance when we know that there's more to her than that, because Barney's guilty of doing the same thing. When she comes back to the hotel, he does not want to let her back into the penthouse. She forgot her room key. She's not registered at the desk. He basically calls her out and just says, do you have any other... because she lies and says that, you know, I'm his niece. And he's like, well, do you have any other uncles in this hotel? You know, he goes, this isn't the kind of place where we do this. And once you check out, I don't ever want to see you here again. So he does the same thing. But when she shows him the money and she shows how desperate she is, he's the one that steps up. He calls this woman Bridget at the store. He calls in a favor. And their relationship takes off from there.
I'm glad you bring this up, because to me, what Barney does is so much more hurtful. You expect this of women, unfortunately, sizing each other up and being catty like this. But for him to call her out the way that he does, you know, it would almost be less harmful if he said what he meant. You know, the dancing around it to me is what makes it so painfully awkward. I'm sure that he's violating all kinds of hotel policy by doing this, but this is also very telling of the time, because let's pretend for a second that she was the stigma of what everybody thought prostitution was, that she was a drug addict. Even though the guy working the elevator confirms that she was up there last night, nobody knows about this arrangement. She forgot her key. How does Barney know that she's not just trying to get back up into the penthouse and that Edward actually did invite her there? So I feel like that violates a lot of hotel policy, but at the same time, it does reflect the nature of the town to kiss everybody's butt because they have money and just give him what he wants. No questions asked. And I'll bend the rules for you because you're a great client and you stay here a lot. But yeah, the real meaning behind you don't have any other uncles here, do you? Like, that is so harsh. And yet underneath it all, because she's able to like match wits with him, he sort of takes a liking to her. And that's why he agrees to help her. It's not even, it doesn't even come from a place of, I need to clean you up if you're going to walk through my hotel lobby. It's just because she's so endearing, he responds to her.
And they take off from there because after she goes ahead and gets her new dress, she realizes she does not know how to behave at a proper dinner, and she does not want to embarrass Edward. So she goes to Barney and says, I have a problem. He assumes that the dress she bought doesn't fit. It's that she doesn't know how to eat a proper meal, and he's got to sit her down privately and go over the salad fork, the dinner fork. This whole thing is phenomenal.
I love that they do that. I love that her character thinks on those terms, that not only do I have to look the part, I have to play the part. Again, it shows that she's smart and she's one step ahead. And I also like, again, subverting expectations. They didn't just play the dinner scene for comedy where they send her in to fall on her face and she doesn't know what to do. They do a little bit of that, but this could have been so much more over the top. And I like that even at dinner, Morris takes a liking to her.
Yes.
And tries to level with her. I don't know which fork to use either. And he picks it. It's kind of Beauty and the Beast in that way, of when Belle realizes he can't use the spoon, so she decides to slurp. Morris is eating with his hands to make her more comfortable.
Yeah, I love this entire dinner scene. I think it is so perfect. To your point, where it's playing for laughs, it's hysterical. I think that it sets up Morris, who's a billionaire. Let's call him what it is. He's a billionaire, but at the end of the day, he's a family man. He cares about his staff. He cares about those around him. It also sets up Edward and the fractured relationship with his father, and how Morris calls everything out about his father, who has since passed away. We learn a month prior. All of that plays perfectly, as does Vivian seeing straight through Edward for what he really is.
The only thing that I don't love about this restaurant scene, and this is so nitpicky, but it literally bothers me every time that I watch this or anytime I see a clip of it. Because when you see clips of this movie, I think this is one of the more prominent ones where she accidentally flings the escargot.
Mm-hmm.
For what's supposed to be a very high-end restaurant, and granted, this was late 80s, conceptualized late 80s, filmed late 80s, came out in 1990. The decor was very different back then. Like darks and woods, that was all the rage. It wasn't open, light, and airy the way that decor is now. But they just look like they are shoved in a corner. They're up against the pole, or the column, I should say, in the middle of the restaurant. And I think the wine rack is behind them.
Yeah.
But I don't know the way that they shot this. And I love Gary Marshall. This is not a knock at him whatsoever. It just feels so tight in this scene and so closed in. And I'm like, this is supposed to be a high-end restaurant. If you were going to give them like a private room, this would work. It's just the blocking, like something has always just felt very off to me, and makes it feel like they're shoved in the back.
Well, it makes it look like they just took a table and put it in front of a staircase, because that's where they had the best room to set cameras, to put extras. That's how it looks. It doesn't bother me as much as it bothers you, but you're looking at this with a different eye than I am.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're... I don't believe that this was a set build. I think that they were in an actual restaurant, but You're not doing it during business hours. You're going to shut the whole thing down. So like you can put them anywhere you want and put your extras anywhere you want.
True. The next day, they decide that they're going to go. Well, I shouldn't say they. Edward decides that they are going to go shopping again, because he hands her the credit card, says, go out, buy more clothes because you're going to be with me the whole week. We've got more events to attend. And she goes, it wasn't as much fun as I thought it was going to be. She said, I love how she delivers that line. Because let's call it what it is. She can't pay her rent. Now she's being handed a credit card with basically an unlimited limit to go and spend and buy whatever she wants on Rodeo Drive. And she'd rather just stay in because it's not fun because of how she got treated. I love the fact that she establishes that, and I love the fact that he goes, no, that's not good enough, let's go. And he walks into that store, and he says, we're going to be spending an obscene amount of money, so just take care of her.
And I love that she goes back and sticks it to those other women who are working on commission. By the way, Edward really gets the short end of this deal, because for what he's paying her, when you break it down, let's call it $3,000 for 5 days, just to keep the numbers round. And even with 5 days, it's $600 a day. That would be on the high end. If it's 6 or 7 days, it's a little bit lower, but let's call it the high end, because what she is purchasing, it's not just a dress. She's got multiple bags and multiple pairs of shoes now. What she is spending on clothing far exceeds what she's making when you break down the day rate.
He doesn't care. He's got that much money. He does not care.
I understand that, but from her perspective, she's making out like gangbusters on this.
Yeah. And that's where the polo match is so perfectly placed in this movie. Because now you're starting to see she is happy. He's happy with her. She's starting to grow more comfortable. She's starting to play the part a little bit more. And she's starting to, like, inadvertently impress people with her sense of humor.
Well, not just that. Before we get to the polo match, they're also very much opening up to each other, because at night, they're not just being physically intimate, they're being emotionally intimate by talking about their past. And, like, you know, we kind of glossed over it. There's the super sexy piano scene, which, you know, I know Edward gets whatever he wants out of this hotel, but, like, we're not doing a lot to help the reputation of having her there by doing this very publicly. But she sought him out because she was getting lonely just watching movies by herself. She wanted his companionship. So you can tell that they're starting to get a little bit closer. Then the next night, they're in the bathtub. This is after the dinner when she learns about his father. And then he opens up about what his relationship with his father was like even more. So now they've got this whole other relationship that has completely gone past the bounds of their agreement. It's completely more than physical. They are really starting to open up. And I think that's important because she's really starting to see that this could be more and that she's capable of more and that she wants more importantly with him. So now when she's going to be amongst his friends, she's really starting to believe it of herself that this could work.
And that's where you needed this.
Yep.
It is the most perfectly placed scene. I love the dialogue between the two of them when she goes, "These are your friends?" And he's like, "Well, these are the people I spend time with." And she goes, "No wonder you came looking for me."
Yeah.
That's hysterical.
Yeah.
It's the best line in the movie, but then it takes a turn with Philip. When he confides in Philip who she really is because he's trying to be honest, because Philip is saying, "Who is this person? Where did you meet her? You seem distracted. We've got $1 billion deal. We've been working a year on it. We've done over 1,000 man-hours to get this thing done." And he admits to what she is because he trusts him. Edward trusts Philip. And Philip goes and says, "I'm not going to," goes right to her and says, "Hey, listen, he told me the truth. Don't worry, I'm not going to say anything. But, when he leaves, maybe we can get together."
He who has a wife, by the way.
He who has a wife. He doesn't care. This scene is so damn good. It's hard to watch, but it's so damn good. And considering where we just talked about Jason Alexander 2 weeks ago with Cinderella.
Oh, God.
And then he's doing it. He's phenomenal in this scene.
This is probably the most perfect scene in the film. The way that it's shot, the way that everybody is in character, the dialogue, like this is textbook screenwriting, soup to nuts. Even just the way that Vivian is charming everyone. This goes back to what I was saying before, is that she is starting to believe not that she's playing a part, that she is the part and that there is a future here. Because of course, Edward's friends are kind of shallow. They're attracted to her because she is gorgeous. And that's why everybody's paying attention to her. But then they realize, oh, she's really charming. She's got the personality to back this up. So everybody's just kind of drawn to her. And that's what makes Phil so insecure. Like even after they do the divot stomping and the guy's like, "Oh, let me clean your shoes for you." She fits right in and she's starting to forget what is her quote unquote dirty little secret. So to have him literally throw that in her face, it's incredible, especially the way that Edward tries to dance around it. It's one of the funniest lines too. "Oh, she's in sales."
Yeah.
It's not wrong. It's not a lie.
Not a lie.
But, you think that Edward trusts Phil because he thinks that they're friends, but even as his lawyer, it's like with anything else, like with medical, there's supposed to be a patient-doctor confidentiality agreement, or with a therapist. Like it's just kind of like an unspoken thing that comes with the territory of your job. And the fact that Phil is using that against her, and not just to put her in her place, but then to demean her by, "I want it too." It's disgusting. He's disgusting.
And it's so perfectly played. We get back to the penthouse where we have the argument between Vivian and Edward. It's so sadly charming. That's the best way I could put this argument.
And then she doesn't take the money.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
I go back and forth on whether or not she was totally justified in her reaction because, he's legitimately apologizing to her. And he says, like, I was honest with him, and in not so many words, I've known him for 10 years. I thought I could trust him.
Mm-hmm.
And when she's like, she's saying that he's making her, I've never felt so cheap in my life. I've never felt like this. I've never felt like this. It's like, not for anything, but he's taking you shopping on Rodeo Drive, and, he's putting you up in this really swanky hotel, and you were on Hollywood Boulevard jumping into random cars like 5 days ago. I'm pretty sure you felt cheaper before. So that line is a little weak, I thought, but I go back and forth on whether I can understand why she's upset, but I felt like her taking it out on him seemed like more of a jump. It makes more sense to me later on in the movie when she does it the second time. I think it's fine. It doesn't ruin my feel of the movie or the characters, but I just don't know that this particular scene was necessary.
No, I definitely think it was. I think it's a couple of things. Number one, Edward could have told Phil that she was an escort, that he just hired somebody to have at his beck and call to be his date and his +1 to all of these events throughout the week. Instead, after Phil keeps pressing him, he's like, she's a hooker. I picked her up the other night on Hollywood Boulevard. He didn't have to say that. He still could have gotten duped by trusting Phil and not, said it verbatim quite like that. I think her reaction is completely justified because there are feelings involved for her at this point. And she has started to believe her own hype that this could actually work. So I think that that's where her reaction comes from. But the other thing is, to your point, Edward is so socially awkward. He doesn't know what to do in this situation. He's like, that's the 7th time you've said fine. And to him, this is probably a retread of every argument he's had with his ex-wife and his ex-girlfriend of, oh, here we go. She's mad at something that happened over my job. So I think the key here is when he says, I apologize to you, let's move on. He thinks that's good enough because that's what you're supposed to do. But like, if all he did was say, I'm sorry, but not actually know what he's apologizing for, that's two different things. Saying you're sorry and actually taking accountability for what you did are two absolutely different things. And he's just ready to move on, because this is also where he sort of regresses. For as much as he's opened up to her, this is still a business agreement to him. So it's like, why are you getting so upset? We've got 2 days left together. Let's just go back to the terms. So I think for as much as he's aware that he's starting to fall for her, I don't think that he knows what to do with her falling for him.
Well, that's it. I don't think that to him it was a business decision at this point. I think it's just a defense mechanism.
Yeah.
And he goes into his comfort zone.
So then, obviously, all is forgiven. They have their night, and she opens up about her backstory, about how she landed in this position.
Right.
And, I followed a bunch of bums around. I followed a bum out to Hollywood, and now I'm here by myself, and I couldn't make the rent. And then she met Kit, and Kit got her into this profession. But this is the part that he's always known about her. This is what he's been drawn to the entire time, is that she's more than meets the eye.
Right.
And I think that this was a big moment for her character too. I mean, we have seen her, not live up to the stigma in any way, shape, or form this entire time. But this is where it really humanizes her, is that, she was just a girl at one point too. Yeah.
The next day, he surprises her with this private jet to take her to San Francisco, gets her this beautiful ball gown. They get a $250,000 necklace on loan from the jewelry store.
This is the Cinderella fairy godmother came, waved the wand, and made the look dress. This is like the dress.
Yes. And one of the most iconic shots in the film ended up being something that was meant for the gag reel, but they loved it so much they kept it in.
Yes, when he gives her the necklace, he snaps the box shut on her hand. But you can tell, like, that is her real laugh. Like, that is Julia Roberts' real laugh. Because any other time that she laughs in the film, it's not like this.
So they leave it in, they go to the opera, and we've established a couple of times that that Edward has a fear of heights. And they're up on the balcony, and she's looking over the side at the opera house. Oh, look, and he's like, I've seen it. And she's like, if you have a fear of heights, why do you buy these seats? It was the same question she asked about the penthouse. If you have a fear of heights, because he won't go out on the balcony. If you have a fear of heights, why did you do this? And his answer is because they're the best. Like, that's a microcosm for him in totality. I just got it because it was the best.
Is this a really cute date to try and make up for everything, or is it a test to see if she can still blend in?
No, I don't think it's... I think he knows that she can blend in. I think that he's, at this point, trying to continue to woo her. I think, if anything, he's trying to show her these are the luxuries in life. You don't necessarily need to go back to what you were doing before. I think that he sees that she starts crying during the opera because she's emotionally taken by it. And I don't think it's a test so much as it confirms that this is somebody that I can realistically build a relationship with, maybe not as quickly as she wanted one. And that obviously takes a turn in a few moments when we talk about the scene where he offers to get her the condo. And that's a few minutes down the road. I think it's more that he's showing her that she can still have the good things in life. He's willing to give that to her.
I feel like it's a bit heavy-handed, though, with the setup of you either fall in love with opera right away or you learn to appreciate it. And it's like, oh, does she actually understand this?
But I think that that's opera. You know, you either fall in love with it or you hate it. And then, like, you appreciate it down the road when you're like, oh yeah, this is actually, these performers are very talented. I, for one, do not like opera, but I admit that they are very, very talented performers.
I mean, no, I agree. I think opera is very much love it or hate it, but it's just the way that he poses the question. It kind of makes it seem like, oh, are you intelligent enough to understand what's happening? Can you still hang? And I love that she's just so effortlessly herself at the end when the woman asks her if she likes it. And she's like, it's so great. I almost peed my pants. And he's got to cover up. I love that moment. So then she finally convinces him, because she is getting to him, to take a day off and go out and touch grass and get out of your head a little bit. So I love that, you know, it's perfectly juxtaposed against he gave her this great night out, but this is what she can do for him. Doesn't have to be something expensive. Doesn't have to be, you know, she doesn't have to spend any money on him, but there are lessons to be learned from her in the simple things.
We also get a scene where in the limousine, they go over to the Blue Banana and she's looking for Kit because she had left $200 for Kit at the desk of the hotel because that was the money they needed to pay off this guy Carlos, who's a drug dealer, who's been pursuing them because Kit took the rent money and spent it on drugs, but she hasn't repaid what she owes Carlos. And she goes to find her, and nobody has seen her for a few days. I think in the original script, Kit is supposed to die of a drug overdose. I think in the original script for this film, this is where it plants that she's gone. I don't think it confirms that they've found her yet, but I think her disappearance and we haven't seen her, this is where she is technically in the original script supposed to die.
Right. And then the beginning of this film, it opens with the body in the dumpster. So like, this is exactly what Vivian is afraid of for her friend, and she hasn't seen or heard from her in a couple of days.
We obviously know Kit is alive when she comes back to the hotel to get the money and sort of talk some sense into Vivian. But let's talk about the scene that happens right before this. It's the last day together. And Edward offers to get Vivian a condo in Manhattan, a car, an allowance.
Okay, is it Manhattan though?
Yes.
Or is it LA?
I thought they said New York.
Okay, see, to me,
'Cause that's his home base.
Right, it is, and that's to me less of a stinger because it's on some level he wants her with him. I thought it was back in LA for whenever he's in town and he's just trying to get her on her feet, and it's kind of like him having his cake and eat it too, and it's, you know, his little secret when he comes back into town.
So I could have sworn he said New York. Maybe I didn't, and I thought that I had, or perhaps I misinterpreted it.
I could be misinterpreting it too, but to me, that's where, I mean, either way, it's offensive because the whole point is that he thinks that he's doing something genuine to help her out and help get her on her feet. And she just looks at this as another arrangement. But to me, it would be slightly less egregious if it's Manhattan because it's at least still with him and where he's at. I took more offense to it as like, I'm going to leave you here. I'm going to put you up that way. I have a place and company when I come back into town because the office building is in LA where Phil works. Like his name is on that building.
Yeah.
So I kind of got the impression that yes, New York is the home base. Yes, his ex-wife lives out on Long Island, but he goes back and forth a lot.
When he says to her, I never made you feel like a cheap hooker. And she goes, you just did.
Mm-hmm.
What a great line. What a great line.
It's so good.
Kit in that lobby, by the way.
Oh, another one of my favorite lines.
I don't know that we can necessarily repeat it, but there's an elderly couple, and she offers one sum of money for the gentleman and one sum of money for the gentleman and for his wife to watch. It was hysterical, and the girl behind the counter, I don't know if it's that the actress was legitimately trying not to laugh, or if this is sort of breaking the wall down where the staff is supposed to be all prim and proper, but at the end of the day, they're just regular people who are tired of these uppity-ups looking down upon them, and she found great joy in that moment of embarrassment. But the line makes me laugh out loud every time I hear it.
It's hilarious. The whole thing is hilarious. I love that they left the desk girls chuckle in, whether it was a break or not, because I also think it just speaks to how real Kit and Vivian are.
Yeah.
Like they're just the kind of girls that you want to hang out with. And that's why everybody's able to look past what they're doing.
And I like that, you know, Kit's trying to talk some sense into Vivian, saying, look, you're not going to be the girl in the dumpster if you take him up on this. Why wouldn't you take this opportunity? You're going to be set up. Like, your life is going to vastly improve. And even then, you could tell Vivian's thinking it over, but she's not totally sold on it. And I think that's important because now Vivian wants to go to San Francisco, get a job, finish her diploma. Like, she wants to be her own person. She doesn't want to just be somebody that's living off of somebody else's paycheck. I think that's very important, especially then when Kit later says that, you know, she's going to beauty school. So they're both kind of now finding their own way in life.
I think part of it is also because she wants to believe the good in herself. And because Edward already gave her that piece of information that I think you're smart and I think that you're capable of so much more, she says to him, it's easier to believe the bad stuff. And he helped her to start believing in herself. So how could she take that belief and take his words and then take him up on this? Because it's not her doing it on her own.
Then you get the really, really difficult scene at the hotel because now Edward has gone to the meeting with Morris.
Mm-hmm.
He's decided, I'm not going to be a corporate raider. In fact, I'm going to invest in you. We've got the naval contract. We're going to build ships. In reality, there's probably more money in that contract than there is in selling the land off anyway. But he does that for him and more or less cuts Philip out at that point because he's made the decision independent of Philip.
It also serves to show that this is Vivian's influence on him, that
yes,
he learned he can do business and still care, which is exactly what their relationship was.
Right. So Philip goes to the hotel to find Edward. Instead, he finds Vivian. He's in a fit of rage. I would imagine he's disheveled. He immediately goes for a drink. It was probably not the first place he stopped on the way there. This scene is so brutal to watch. The performance is great between the two of them, specifically Jason Alexander, who's really been known for comedy. So to see him in this role, slap Vivian across the face, get on top of her, and then get punched by Edward, this whole scene is really, really well done.
It really is. I think he knew that Edward wasn't back yet. I think that he knew Edward was kind of off doing his own thing. I think that this was absolutely intentional. I think he went there under the guise of, oh, I'm looking for Edward. He's not here. I think he wanted to harm her, not just with the slap, because that's the thing. I think it's so easy to write it off as, well, this is your job, so who can, like, no. And especially because Vivian and Kit, they have their agreement. They hold each other to a promise of it's our terms, because they're not working for a pimp. It's we decide who and when and how much, and that's the rules that they live by. And what he's doing, he is assaulting her. It doesn't matter what she does for a living.
Right.
This was not consensual. So it's horrible and difficult to watch for the physical nature of it. But even before all of that, he is so unnecessarily cruel, putting her down.
Yeah.
But then he still wants it from her. Again, disgusting.
So obviously now that business relationship has fizzled out. And so has the one between Vivian and Edward, because Vivian packs her things. She goes back to her apartment. She packs up the apartment, because at this point it's assumed she's got the $3,000 in tow. It's enough to get her on her feet in San Francisco, start her new life. And it's not until Edward is in the car, in the limousine, with Daryl, his driver, on the way to the airport, and Daryl's telling him, your flight's leaving on time, you're going to get in on time, that he then decides to reroute, change his mind, and go rescue her from the hotel that she's living in. And she had told him previously the story of when her mother would punish her, and she made up this story that, she'd be in the tower waiting for the prince to come and save her. He tackles his fear going up the fire escape. I love the line of when he asks her what happens to the prince after he rescues the princess, and she goes, she saves him right back.
Ugh.
It is the perfect ending to this movie.
It's so poetic. But even before that, what I really like too is that she wasn't just like, I'm out of here. She wasn't still mad about his offer to put her up. She decided on her own terms, this is not going to be good for me, because no matter what I do, no matter how much he cares about me, the people that he surrounds himself with are still going to view me the way that I was. No matter how much I advance in life, I'm still going to be attached to that here. So she decided on her own terms, I need to go someplace else and start over. So I love that where they end things in the hotel, it was a mutual agreement that, you know what, we're just going to go back to what this was always supposed to be. This was business as usual. I'm going my way. You're going yours. And they're just completely leveled at that point. The playing field is leveled. So by the time he does get back to her, it really is this grand gesture. And I love how Barney plants that seed. And he's like, well, Daryl did drop her off last night. Like, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. He knows where to find her. Yeah. Because this will get lost on today's terms. There are no cell phones. He had no way of tracking her down. But gosh, what an ending. It really delivered, because I feel like that happens in a lot of rom-coms where it builds and it builds and it builds, and they're going to end up together. So it's kind of like the last scene where they get back after overcoming that final obstacle. It's just kind of like, okay, whatever, there's a kiss. But this one, it held that, it delivered on the build.
Yes. So a lot of things to be on the lookout for in this movie. Perhaps cameos, perhaps something hidden in the background of a set. They are filming in Hollywood after all, so it was a good time to have a super sleuth eye, so to speak. Where in the Film is brought to you by our friends at Where in the Park, a seek-and-find card game that you can play in your favorite parks. Whether it is Disney or Universal, SeaWorld, or more, Where in the Park challenges you to spot those little details that so many can miss. To order your game packs, visit monoreelradio.com and click our affiliate link for a 10% discount today. Early on in the film, I caught a cameo. I would imagine you probably caught it too, because his accent is so distinct that it's almost impossible to not recognize Gary Marshall having a cameo in his own film, where I'm not sure if he was a homeless man rummaging through the trash or if he was just an old man taking his trash out, interacting with Richard Gere when he's looking for directions at the beginning of the film.
No, I believe he's a homeless man, but that's what did it for me. I mean, Gary Marshall is known to make a cameo in each of his films, like much like Michael Bay does it too. But that's what caught my attention. I don't think the first time that I was watching this to review it for the show, I breezed right over it because the voice is so familiar. And then the second time through, I was like, why would they cast someone with such a thick New York accent to be playing an LA native that would know where to give direction? And I was like, oh, well, because that is in fact Gary Marshall, and that's why the accent is so thick. But yeah, we got Stallone's house over here. I love it. It was great.
By the way,
funny.
I think he had another cameo later. I'm assuming that was your Where in the Film as well.
Yeah, because I didn't really notice anything else. Like, there's no mistakes. This is flawless direction.
Yeah.
Not
a ton of Easter eggs.
Not a ton of Easter eggs, because it's just the hotels and the restaurants and the clothes.
I think he had a second cameo later where he didn't have any audio. There's a scene where I believe it's a grandfather giving a grandson a piggyback ride when Richard Gere goes out for the walk by himself. I think that was him.
That's why they held the shot for so long.
I think that was him. And I know, and I probably, well, I could have used this. There was one more cameo, but it wasn't really a cameo because he was a almost completely unknown actor.
He's just a full character with a credit. Yeah.
Hank Azaria.
Yep.
Plays the detective with the corpse at the beginning of the movie.
I did a double take on that one. I was like, is that Hank Azaria? And then he opens his mouth and I was like, yeah.
Because he doesn't age.
I wish Gary Marshall was the grandpa where Kit offers them money to watch.
That would have been
That would have been an incredible cameo.
All right, let's talk about our cast here, starting with Julia Roberts. This was her breakout role. She was 21 years old. She was nominated for an Academy Award, won a Golden Globe. She's absolute perfection in this movie.
I cannot even wrap my mind around the fact that she was 21 years old, because you had said it before. She was so established by the time we were old enough to like start watching her movies. Like, to me, my first Julia Roberts movie was My Best Friend's Wedding. Equally great rom-com. I absolutely love that movie. She's wonderful in it. But by the time I had seen it, you had that, you had Erin Brockovich, you had Stepmom. So she had all of these huge roles, and I knew her as an actress, and I knew that this was the film where she got her start. But it just didn't occur to me, because when you're a kid, everybody always seems so much older.
Yeah.
It never occurred to me that she was 21 making this, and that this is one of her early films. Like, she had Mystic Pizza under her belt by this point, but Mystic Pizza was not the cult classic that it is now. It was just a movie that flopped at the box office. So she was virtually unknown, and the way that she just commands the screen every time she's on, she just lights it up. And like, yes, we know that she's got a gorgeous smile, but she's just got so much charisma and personality. You are just drawn in and captivated by her the entire time.
Richard Gere plays Edward Lewis. He had turned this script down on a couple of occasions, and it wasn't until Gary Marshall and Julia Roberts sat with him, and she convinced him to do this movie. Originally, when this was a dark film, Michael Keaton had been cast in the role, which makes a lot of sense. Julia Roberts actually had to fight to get this role back. She was cast in 3000 and had to audition again to get it when it was sold to Disney. But Richard Gere in this iteration was absolutely perfect.
I love Richard Gere. I mean, to me, Chicago is like the creme de la creme. He's so good in that movie. But he's absolutely incredible in this. I think it's very easy to write him off as like the handsome, charming leading man, sure. But like to draw that line with this like emotionally scarred little boy that's still got daddy issues, it gives the role so much more nuance, and he's just so freaking good.
Jason Alexander plays Philip Stuckey. He's unbelievable. He is funny when you expect him to be funny. He's brooding and awful when you expect him to be funny. Maybe it's because at this point we're looking at it 35 years later. We know who Jason Alexander is. So this character seems so out of touch for him. And I think that's why I'm so impressed with his performance.
It really does show his range. Like I had no idea, you know, when you think about George Costanza, obviously, you know that he can handle comedy. And I was impressed when we did Cinderella a couple weeks ago at his musical theater chops. But like, you don't think that he's capable of playing a role like this because the character is such a scumbag, but he nails this too.
You have Laura San Giacomo as Kit. I love where she is peppered in.
Yep.
She offers lightheartedness, comedy, irresponsibility, bad and yet good influence all at the same time. I love her as a companion here.
She's a great sidekick, but she's like Vivian's sister, really. You know, she'll cause mischief, she'll get her into trouble, but she'll also be the first person to save her from it. I love their relationship, and I love her on her own. She's just not going to take anyone's crap. She's great.
And let's talk about Hector Elizondo as Barney.
I just love him. I mean, I loved him in The Princess Diaries, but this role where he's just like the nurturing, I'll take you under my wing, like almost like a father figure to, he's just so good. I love him so much.
Final thoughts. This movie's perfect.
It's like, what else do you say about it?
Nothing. I think that this film holds up incredibly well. Julia Roberts has since said that she doesn't know if you could make this movie today because of some of the subject matter. I think you could make this movie today. With that said, I hope they never remake this film. We're clearly not going to get a sequel. You didn't need one anyway. See, now, if this movie had come out last year, Disney would have them signed for a sequel, the third movie, and then they'd already be doing the spin-off prequel show for Disney+. So I'm glad that, like, we're not doing that. And a musical. The musical is out there now. Yeah, it's sheer perfection. I hope it never gets remade. Do I think it's the greatest rom-com of all time? I don't watch a lot of rom-coms. But based on what I've seen, yeah, this is the best one.
Sean,
I think
your default rom-com is failure to launch, okay? You do not have the bar set very high.
But it's because it's one of the few that I've actually watched. But I think that this one is the best one. I think this movie is timeless. I think it was worth the wait. It's one that I haven't watched a lot previously, but I can be sure it's going to go into rotation heavily now.
Absolutely. Like, there's no reason that I haven't revisited it often. What's really interesting to me is that you're talking about the potential for it to be remade. Anora just hit Hulu, which was the Best Picture Oscar winner this year. And that is the same type of story, is that she was selling herself and then got hired to be something more. And when that hit Disney Plus, I was thinking to myself, even though they didn't produce Anora and they probably wanted to acquire it because it won the Best Picture, I was like, I'm surprised that they would be interested in a film like that. And I was like, oh, wait. Nope, they've already done it. And at the time of this recording, I've not been able to watch Anora yet. I want to. I was hoping to get it in this week so that we could kind of compare and contrast. But I think it's a fair comp that if you like this movie, you will probably like Anora.
Well, we are interested in knowing what you have to say about Pretty Woman. You can send us a message on all forms of social media at Monoreel Radio, or you can send us an email, monoreelradio@gmail.com. News of the week is coming up, but first, a quick break.
News of the Week is proudly sponsored by KMV Travel. KMV Travel is a boutique travel agency that helps families plan personalized vacations and create unforgettable memories on land and at sea. KMV Travel specializes in Disney destinations, family theme parks, and most major cruise lines, providing unmatched service from start to finish with the belief that vacations are an important part of life. KMV Travel will help you and your family experience new places, learn about other cultures, relax, and reconnect with those who mean most. KMV Travel will guide you from booking to bon voyage, ensuring you have the tools you need to enjoy each moment of your vacation at no extra cost to you. Visit kmvtravel.com to connect with an expert travel advisor and start planning your getaway now.
Kids of the 90s rejoice. We have a documentary about a Goofy movie coming to Disney+. I am so excited for this one. It is dropping on April 7th, and it is called Not Just a Goof.
Yes, April 7th being the anniversary, the 30th anniversary of a Goofy movie. This has been in the works for a while, but it was independently produced, so I'm glad that Disney Plus is picking it up. This is kind of like Awakening Sleeping Beauty or the Sherman Brothers movie, that it was done outside, but Disney has sort of embraced it because I guess they have approved the accuracy and the narrative.
And here's one for you. Talking about movies that don't need to be franchises and don't need to have sequels. I don't want to say 3 steps forward and 1 step back. But Disney announced this week that in 2029, we're getting a sequel to Coco. I mean, look, you can kill more people. I mean, sure. But now it's just The Sixth Sense, okay? It's an animated version of The Sixth Sense that happens in Mexico. Why do we need another Coco movie?
I mean, I don't want to be so quick to judge because you have things like Inside Out 2, which are phenomenal. Toy Story 2, also phenomenal. Cars 2, not so much. But Pixar does have a pretty good proven track record with sequels. However, Coco is so freaking perfect. It's like, why are we doing this? To your point, do we genre flip it? Like, is it going to be a Knives Out style? Who's next to die within Miguel's family?
I'd be down for that. Like, if that's what you're going to do, like, sign me up. I'm in.
I don't know where you go. And at the same time,
but Daniel Craig has to be in it then.
Yeah. Yeah.
If that's what you're going to do, he has to be in it.
I mean, at the same time, though, am I going to be first in line to go see it? Yeah, because the animation was so stunning. And, like, I'll go back into the world of the dead. It was beautiful.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us this and every week on Monoreel Radio. Monoreel Radio will always be free, but there are many ways that you can support the show. Please give us a rating wherever you listen to your podcast. Join the conversation on social media at Monoreel Radio on all major platforms. Share your favorite episodes with family and friends who may enjoy them. And of course, book your next trip with Jackie. Links to everything can be found at monoreelradio.com. We all get one story. Make yours a magical one.
On behalf of Monoreel Radio, we'd like to thank you for joining us. We'll see you at the movies, the stuff dreams are made of.